The first time I saw his SUV on our hunting path, I thought I was hallucinating. Nobody, absolutely nobody, drove that trail. It wasn't a road. It wasn't even in the HOA paperwork. That path was family land carved through generations, meant for boots, maybe an old pickup during hunting season, but never a shiny black $70,000 SUV. Before we dive in, comment which country you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. Now, let me back up and explain how this whole mess started. I've lived in this neighborhood for years, long before the HOA expansion reached our side of town. The trail behind my property wasn't just dirt. It was heritage. My grandfather had blazed it with a hand axe. My father had maintained it with an old tractor, and I kept it alive as my escape when the world got too loud. Then, 6 months ago, a man named Stephen Carver bought one of those gaudy new McMansions at the corner. He didn't move in quietly. He stormed in like a sheriff claiming new territory. Within weeks, he had joined the HOA board, slapped a reflective vest on his chest that read HOA Inspector, and started quoting regulations that sounded like they'd been made up in his bathroom mirror. First, it was my fence. He claimed the rails weren't aesthetically compliant. Then it was my mailbox, apparently too rural and aesthetic. But the last straw was the morning he drove straight through my hunting path. I was outside dressing a deer when I heard it, the crunch of tires over brittle autumn leaves. I looked up just in time to see his SUV crush one of my turkey decoys like it was roadkill. The tinted window slid down, and there he was, slick hair, smug smile, clipboard balanced on the steering wheel. This falls under HOA jurisdiction. He declared like he was quoting scripture. Clause 12:4. Green corridors must be accessible for utility review. I stared at him, bloodied buck's legs still in my hands. This is private land. You're trespassing. He smirked, eyes hidden behind his sunglasses. Submit an application if you want to keep using it. Otherwise, don't be surprised if it's repurposed. He drove off, opera music echoing like a final insult. Fuming, I marched straight to the HOA office that afternoon to speak with Karen Whitfield, the president. If anyone could put him in his place, it should have been her. Instead, she folded her arms and sighed. Well, Stephen is just very dedicated to community safety. If he thought your trail was a risk, I'm sure he was only trying to help. Help. I snapped. He flattened my decoy and trespassed on private land. Karen just gave that dismissive little smirk. Technically, all land inside the HOA boundary can be reviewed for future planning. You should be grateful. Really, he's looking out for the neighborhood. That was it. The moment I realized the system wasn't just broken, it was stacked against me. That night, I skipped dinner, poured a third bourbon, and started welding. The spike trap was ugly, mean, and perfect, buried under leaves, angled for a perfect tire strike. The next morning, I sat on my porch, coffee in hand, waiting for round 2. The trap was simple, brutal, and invisible. I'd sunk steel spikes into a wooden frame, set it just below the leaves, and anchored it with enough weight to stay put. Anyone stupid enough to take that path in an SUV was about to learn a very expensive lesson. Sure enough, it didn't take long. By mid-morning, I heard the faint rumble of Stephen Carver's luxury tank crawling toward the trail again. I grabbed my coffee mug, leaned back in my chair, and watched. The SUV nosed down the narrow lane like it owned the place, opera blaring out of his open sunroof. His sunglasses caught the sunlight as he leaned over his clipboard, scribbling notes, probably dreaming of turning my hunting path into a jogging trail for the HOA weekend warriors. Then it happened. Thump, crack, pop. The front tires blew in perfect unison, rubber shredding like wet paper. The back end slammed down next, rims grinding against steel, sparks spitting out like fireworks on the 4th of July. The SUV lurched sideways, skidded through the leaves, and finally collapsed into a pathetic heap right in front of my porch. Stephen stumbled out of the driver's side, arms flailing. What the hell just happened? He crouched down, staring at his mangled tires, veins bulging in his forehead. This is sabotage. This is criminal. I took a slow sip of coffee. Or maybe it's nature's way of telling you to stay off private land. He spun toward me, face redder than a boiled lobster. Do you have any idea how much these tires cost? This SUV is valued at over 70 grand. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. If you're enjoying this HOA story so far, like and subscribe because the story is only going to get better. Stephen whipped out his phone, pacing in circles while muttering threats into the receiver. I could hear the word lawsuit repeated about 4 times in under a minute. He even tried snapping photos of the ground as if the leaves themselves were incriminating evidence. "Enjoy your pictures," I called out. "That trail's been in my family for 3 generations. You don't belong here and you know it." He jabbed a finger in my direction. "Karen will back me up. The HOA has jurisdiction. You can't just lay traps like some lunatic in the woods." I smirked. "Funny because what you did, driving across private property without consent, that's called criminal trespass. Texas Penal Code Section 30.05 makes it pretty clear. If you enter land without the owner's permission, you're breaking the law. You want to take this to court, be my guest." His jaw tightened. He didn't like that I knew the law better than he did. After 30 minutes of kicking dirt, ranting into his phone, and sulking by his wounded SUV, a tow truck finally arrived. The driver took one look at the shredded tires and muttered, "Man, someone did not want you up here." Stephen glared at me one last time before climbing into the truck. "This isn't over." I just smiled. "You're right, it's just beginning." Stephen wasn't the type to lick his wounds quietly. The man came back swinging, this time not with his SUV, but with paperwork. A week after the spike trap incident, I found an envelope taped to my front door. It was a notice of intent to sue. He claimed I'd created a hazardous environment and demanded compensation for the willful destruction of his luxury SUV tires. The kicker, he wanted $15,000 in damages. 2 days later, another letter came, this one with Karen's signature as HOA president. She accused me of violating community access easements and claimed the association had rights to regulate my back trail. She even threatened fines if I didn't remove unauthorized landscaping hazards. In her world, a centuries-old hunting path carved by my family was apparently just another sidewalk project waiting to happen. I wasn't about to take this lying down. I hired a property lawyer who nearly choked on his coffee when he read their claims. "They don't have a leg to stand on," he said. "This isn't HOA land. This is your private property, and installing defensive measures against trespassers is well within your rights under state law." He pointed me toward 2 statutes, trespass law under Texas Penal Code 30.05 and private property protection under Civil Code 847. Both made it crystal clear that Stephen and Karen had no business setting foot on that trail. Sure enough, the showdown came one afternoon when Stephen and Karen marched up my driveway together. Stephen's face was still red with indignation, and Karen had her clipboard like it was a sword. "You'll be paying for Stephen's SUV," Karen announced. "And if you think those little spike games will go unanswered, you've got another thing coming. We've filed with the court, and the HOA will back every cent of his claim." I crossed my arms. "Funny you should mention court, because I've already filed trespassing charges, and unlike your make, believe HOA rules, mine come with legal teeth." Karen scoffed, but before she could fire back, a county deputy's cruiser pulled up. Turns out Stephen had called him too, hoping to paint me as the aggressor. When the county deputy stepped out, Stephen and Karen jumped in like a rehearsed act. Karen rattled off her endangerment story. Stephen played the victim, pointing at his shredded SUV, and both demanded I be arrested. The deputy listened patiently, then turned to me. I handed over my paperwork. He looked through it, nodded once, then faced them. "Here's the truth. This land belongs to him. Those signs are legal notice. You drove past them anyway. That's trespassing, plain and simple." He fixed his gaze on Stephen, and when trespass causes damage, you don't get sympathy. You get liability. Karen sputtered, "But the HOA." "The HOA doesn't overrule state law." The deputy cut her off. "He has every right to press charges." I folded my arms, and I will. Trespassing, property damage, harassment. The whole stack. And if you keep pushing, I'll add defamation for all the garbage you've been spreading at meetings. For the first time, Stephen had no words. His face turned the color of his ruined SUV. Karen tried to protest, but the deputy had already pulled out a citation pad. By the end of the week, both Stephen and Karen were slapped with criminal trespass charges. Stephen was ordered to pay for the tow and damages. Karen's position as HOA president crumbled when the board voted her out for dragging the community into a lawsuit. Stephen lost his SUV, Karen lost her power, and I kept my land. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply watching bullies destroy themselves.